Hello everyone, my name is Nilanjan Chatterjee and today we are going to discuss the Aryan Invasion Theory. Okay, so far we have talked about the Indus Valley Civilization and its decline, but today's video will be focusing on the Aryan Invasion Theory. There will be a separate video on the Aryans, particularly the early Vedic and later Vedic civilizations and society, but this video strictly concentrates on how did they come and was there an absolute invasion of the Aryans? Okay, did they invade the people of Indus? So those theories, those historical theories, we are going to discuss in this video. Okay, as we can see the title of the video, Unraveling the Aryan Invasion Theory, a Historical Enigma. Why? Because there are many misconceptions regarding how did the Aryans come, how did they overpower the indigenous people of India. So we'll be clearing out all these misconceptions in this video. And as we can see, the Aryan invasion theory has profoundly influenced the Indian history studies since 19th century. Why? Because the colonizers came around 18th century, and once they started to know about India, their primary intention was to excavate Indian history and historical traditions. Okay, and then their obsession with their race, that is Aryan in nature, actually led them to the conclusion that Indian civilization, Indian history was always dominated by Aryan people. You have to remember one thing: before 20th century, Indus Valley civilization or pre-Aryan civilizations of India was not discovered. Okay, so in 19th century, the colonizers thought, the colonial historians thought that India has an Aryan history or an Aryan heritage. Okay, and that is how they could establish their superiority. Okay, their racial superiority, because the Europeans, the Britishers, used to consider themselves as Aryans. Since they were Aryans, Indian civilization, if they could portray Indian civilization as a civilization that begins with the Aryan invasion, they could have easily portrayed themselves as a superior race. Okay, so that is the main reason behind propagating Aryan invasion theory as the main what do I say, lookout of Indian history. Okay, and the genesis of Aryan invasion theory in 1786, Sir William Jones reveals linguistic links between Sanskrit, Greek, and Latin. Okay, he reveals the linguistic links between Sanskrit, Greek, and Latin. We know that Sir William Jones was he was the founder of the Asiatic Society of India, and in 1786, since he was an Orientalist scholar, he tried to figure out a bridge between these three classical languages: Sanskrit, Greek, and Latin, as Indo-European languages which were common amongst every single Aryan tribes, okay, or which were a common thread in the Aryans, amongst the Aryans. So in mid-19th century, a very important German Orientalist, his name was Max Müller, advances the theory of Sanskrit-speaking Aryans invading India. Max Müller's idea was that there was some kind of invasion that took place in ancient period where the indigenous people were overpowered by the Sanskrit speaking Aryans, and you know the superiority, the racial superiority of the Aryans, where the indigenous non-Aryan people were subdued by the Aryans. Okay, and that is why Indian history almost starts with uh, 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 Aryan invasion. Okay, I'm repeating, they did not know about the fact that even before Aryan civilization or Vedic civilization, India happened to have a very prolonged civilizational heritage of Indus Valley. Okay, and colonial era, The Aryan invasion theory justifies imperial rule and cements division between North India and South India, because it, it, it automatically claims that the Aryans, who are racially superior, okay, who have come from a distant land, from probably from the Caspian Sea region, or from some, for some historians from Anatolian region, for some historians from the Ural range, they have come from that part. They have come to India, they've overpowered them, and there was this racial superiority. So the white skinned people have always overpowered and subdued the indigenous brown skinned or black skinned Proto Australoid type people of South Asia. So that is how these Orientalist scholars or British scholars, they tried to create a division between the Aryans and non-Aryans. People of India having Aryan features like white skin, sharp nose, these physical features, they were considered to be superior, more superior than the dark-skinned people living particularly in the southern part of India. So that is how they also create a racial division amongst Indian people, and also they portrayed themselves to be the authentic Aryans of carrying the same race and lineage of the ones who overpowered India in ancient times. Uh, so early archaeological interpretations, for example, so John Marshall and Mortimer Wheeler, who were uh, the first group of people who talked about Indus Valley civilization, who discovered Indus Valley civilization and went into details of the Indus Valley civilization, correlated Harappan decline with Aryan arrival. So both for John Marshall and Mortimer Wheeler, the Harappan civilization, the Indus Valley civilization, declined because of the advent of the Aryans. Was it true? That is my question. We'll be dealing with this question in our video, and there are of course some limitations of this opinion. These conclusions were speculative and lacked robust evidence. We do not have enough concrete historical evidence to prove that the Aryans came and ruled and governed and overpowered and overthrew the common people of India overnight. Okay, so it didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen drastically. Although the Aryans did come to India, it has to have, okay, it might have involved some longer process, okay, as to they came, they mixed with the common people, the centers changed, etc. We'll talk about that. Challenging the invasion narrative. Okay, for example, excavations in Kalibangan and Rakhigari reveal continuity between Harappan and post-Harappan cultures. Okay, so if we look at the excavations, archaeological excavations in Kalibangan and Rakhigari, we'll see that they reveal continuity between Harappan and post-Harappan cultures. Okay, for example, the late mature and the late Harappan sites. Okay, sometimes we see a continuity of Harappan traditions. Okay, in post-Harappan period, in Aryan period. In previous video, we have already discussed this. I'm not going into detail. As we can see in the next slide, famous historian and archaeologist B.B. Lal's work, if we look at, it emphasizes coexistence of painted greyware and late Harappan artifacts. That means during late Harappan period, we see usage of painted greywares, which were mostly used during Vedic period, okay, in early Vedic period. So which means there were like archaeological and material evidence of cultural continuities from late Harappan to early Vedic period, which suggests that there was no absolute decline of the Harappan culture. Rather, it got evolved into a Vedic culture. Okay, because of the advent of the Aryans, we are not denying that. And this is also very important recent work of Michael or Michel Danino's archaeological findings. His findings highlight the absence of evidence for large scale destruction Michael Danino's works also concentrates on Indus Valley civilization, how it declined, and how the Aryans came. So he also didn't find any concrete evidence of warfare taking place or some large scale destruction, okay, purposeful destruction of Indus cities by the Aryans that took place in uh, around 1500 BCE. He he can't find any kind of evidence like that. Okay, uh, reframing the Aryan invasion theory, Colin Renfrew uh, claims that there is this Anatolian hypothesis, okay, where the Aryans are claimed to have come from Anatolian region, okay, Anatolian region near Kazakhstan, Turkey, okay, that region. They've traveled all the way from the northwest and come downwards towards South Asia, okay, and as I've already mentioned, Michel Danino's work emphasizes Saraswati River's role in reshaping understanding of early Indian civilization. So, if we look at the trajectory of Saraswati River, we'll see that it was one of the major reasons behind the changing, the shifting of center in ancient period. Okay, probably not an invasion that took place, rather some geographical causes like changes in the riverbed, river course. Okay, and cultural continuity, I've already mentioned. Linguistic evidence and controversies, this is also an important point. Linguistic studies initially supported AIT, Aryan Invasion Theory, by demonstrating parallels between Sanskrit and Indo-European languages. As I've already mentioned, Max Muller's attempt to link Sanskrit, Latin, and Greek as Indo-Aryan or Indo-European languages, a language that was common amongst Aryan tribes, to prove the superiority of the Aryans over subcontinent, and of course there is an alternative model. There are multiple alternative models. For example, Renfrew's Anatolian hypothesis and out of India theory offer competing explanations that the Aryans never belonged to India. Okay, they were not. They, if we talk about the indigenous culture of South Asia, we have to consider that the Aryans also came from Anatolian region. They've come from a distant land and they've overpowered. Okay, so the attachment to the land of India, if we talk about it pragmatically, uh, is not that concrete or that solid. Uh, and of course, there are critiques like Romila Thapar advocates for a multidisciplinary approach critiquing deterministic use of linguistic similarities between these Indo-European languages, so-called. Uh, According to Romila Thapar, we can't simplify this very nuanced historical understanding by claiming that the Aryans have a shared uh, like intellectual capacity. Okay, they came to India, they have similar kinds of linguistic basis. All the Aryans are somehow connected to each other. That's not possible. For Romila Thapar, multiple exchanges took place between the Aryans and the non-Aryan people. So we can't just say that the Aryans came with their own heritage and juxtaposed their superiority over others. That is not feasible as an argument. Okay, now debating Vedic terms, earlier interpretations like the dasas and dasyus in Rig Veda were seen as reference to subjugated indigenous populations. There are historical claims that in Rigvedic society, these people, the dasas and dasyus, were basically the indigenous people who were once subjugated by the Aryans. So once the Aryans came, they subjugated and sidelined the people of the native people of the indigenous people, and they were later on called as dasas and dasyus. They used to live in the vanas and aranyas, and they were treated as uncivilized people, okay, and to some extent slaves. But this is not entirely trustworthy. okay, as a theory, because contemporary views suggest that uh, these terms, like dasas and dasyus, reflect socio-economic and ritual divisions, not ethnic groups. For example, if we take an account of Indus Valley civilization, we've already discussed, right? Indus Valley civilization also had some socio-political nuances. There were also stratifications within Indus Valley civilization. So if Indus Valley civilization was also stratified, we can't simply claim that the Aryans came and, they overpowered all the common people of Indus. So there are more stratifications, classifications, racial discriminations, or occupational discriminations within Indus society. That also played a crucial role. So we can't claim that all the Indus people were treated as dasas and dasyus. Okay, so there were intermingling between the Aryans and the Indus people, and of course, this nomenclature of dasas and dasyus were much more socio-economic and ritual, religious, than uh, something racial, okay, or political. Of course, the ancient DNA studies reveal deep genetic continuity in Indian subcontinent, claiming that the Indus people survived and they moved forward to with the Aryans. Okay, uh, and minor genetic inflows indicate small scale interactions rather than large scale migrations. Okay, we can't say that large scale migration took place, rather small scale interactions, cultural integrations between the Aryans and non-Aryans did take place. Of course, there were battles and wars fought between uh, Aryans and non-Aryans people. At least that is what some Vedic sources tell us. For example, Indra is known as Purandara. That means the destroyer of city. For example, Dienja claims that Purandara, destroyer of city, means an Aryan god who came and destroyed the cities of the indigenous people, the non-Aryan people. So there are instances where we can see clashes going on between the Aryans and non-Aryans, but that doesn't mean a large-scale extinction of the non-Aryan people, the people of Indus, took place just because of the Aryan invasion. Okay, it's not conclusive enough. And diverse population, Dange argues, for a culturally and biologically diverse yet interconnected population to, I mean, emerged, particularly after later Vedic period. Okay, for example, the Rakigari DNA project findings showcase genetic continuity. Okay, this is also a very important archaeological evidence, and indigenous developments. Okay, findings emphasize indigenous developments rather than external impositions. Scholars like Irfan Habib also claims that there were interactions between Aryan and non-Aryan people in ancient times. Uh, Now we have come to the next point, that is the Saraswati River challenge. The Rig Veda references of Saraswati River uh, claims that it was a very important water body that existed during Vedic times, and satellite imagery of 1900 BCE confirms river desiccation predating supposed Aryan migration. Okay, so because of river desiccation, even before the Aryans came, already the settlements started to shift, okay, its location. Hmm? So it's not the Aryans who came and replaced the entire civilizational trajectory. Okay, and modern interpretation suggests Vedic culture was indigenous to the region. Okay, it's not something unique. The Vedic people, the Aryans, came and they took indigenous practices and they internalized it. So it happened like that. Hmm. For example, the yogic postures, which was found in Harappan civilization, Indus Valley civilization, is a common spiritual posture that is present in even today in India. Uh, for example, the fire altars that have been found from uh, Harappa is also a common I would say, architectural design in ancient India, which is found repeatedly, and the cultural continuity, as we can see, findings support theory of cultural continuity rather than stark dichotomy. Okay. Uh, well, the colonial justification, there are historiographical debate regarding the Aryan invasion theory. As we can see in the very first point, the colonial justifications, because they had to conceive themselves to be the superior race, and that is why they promoted the notion of Aryan invasion, because that is how they could portray themselves as superior. And the Indian scholars' response, they emphasized indigenous origins of Vedic culture. Some scholars claimed that Vedic people were basically Indian people, which is not again a very trustworthy argument. And modern critics like Romila Thapar highlights methodological flaws in early interpretations, claiming that although the Aryans came from distant land, it was not about absolute overpower or absolute dominance of the Aryans. It was interactions. Okay, and political dimensions. AIT became flush points in debates of national identity of India, which is also important for current affairs and how Indians have shaped their, nationalist identity. So, colonial construction critiques cultural exchanges that took place between Aryans and non-Aryans, and integrated view, like Indian civilization, treating Indian civilization uh, mostly as a mosaic of different cultures. Okay, and of course there are interdisciplinary approaches to this Aryan invasion theory, including archaeology, linguistics, genetics, and history, of course, and contextualizing evidence. For example, Upinder Singh emphasizes broader socio-economic and ecological frameworks of this narrative, how the Aryans uh, came in a time when ecological changes were taking place, and they were also a part of those changes. This is also important, and how these ecological changes shaped the socio-economic culture of ancient India. And there were complex interactions between Aryan and non-Aryan people. We've already talked about it. So now we have come to the hypothesis, the conclusion, a contested. So now we have come to the conclusion. The Aryan invasion theory, while historically influential, faces increasing scrutiny. New evidences challenges its core assumptions. Uh, we have discussed Aryan invasion theories in detail. If you have any question, feel free to ask in the comment section and let us know your feelings about this video. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. See you in the next video on Early Vedic Society. Thank you very much again.